Connection, a collaboration between the Community Media Center and the City of Grand Rapids, is broadcasting live today, February 6th, 2023, here on Community Access Television Channel 24 and live streaming at therapidian.org and GRTV's Facebook page. We will be rebroadcasting this program throughout the month on cable GRTV's Channel 25. And now in the studio with me is Grand Rapids Mayor Rosalind Bliss. Mayor Bliss, we welcome you back to our GRTV studio.
Yeah, thank you. It's good to be back.
How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. It's nice to have a little sunshine out there.
Oh, it's been wonderful the last few days.
Yeah, it's been nice.
So we've got a lot to discuss before we even get to chat with Wayne.
Yeah.
Let's talk a little bit about the updates on the Grand Rapids master plan.
Yes, yeah. I keep reminding people that we kicked it off last year, but there's been a lot of work done behind the scenes. So for folks who aren't familiar with the update of the master plan, the last time we updated our master plan was over 20 years ago. And the master plan is really a blueprint for land use for our city. So every time a proposal comes before the Planning Commission, they look at our master plan and determine if the proposal is consistent with the plan. And so it's a really important document. And the update of the master plan is an important time for the community to come together to think about the future of our city and future land use. So we put together, I appointed a committee last year of about 50 individuals. So it's a large group of individuals from all over our city and different backgrounds and different expertise to come together. They've been meeting monthly for several months. About 3 months ago, they made a recommendation to hire a consultant. That's very typical for master plan processes, that you hire an outside consultant to come in and help write and do the work of engaging the community as we work to update the master plan. So the consultant was hired. They are on board, engaged, both with the committee and the subcommittee. There's a executive committee or steering committee of the master plan.
Okay.
It's being led by our planning department. And they are in the process of kicking off the community engagement process. So this month, in just a few weeks, I believe it's February 21st, 22nd, and 23rd, we have neighborhood meetings, one in each ward, from 5 to 7 p.m. The consultant will be there, members of the steering committee will be there, and we'll kick off the initial engagement process to start to get feedback from the community on what they envision the future land map to look like.
And specifically in their neighborhoods as well.
Yeah, we already have some area-specific plans, and many of those that were adopted recently will become a part of the master plan. So some of it will be specific to their neighborhood, but also really thinking about the city as a whole.
Okay.
My hope and really the direction of the master plan updating committee is to really think about growth. So how do we manage growth? We know that there's a lot of people who continue to move into the city. We know that Kent County and West Michigan is the fastest growing part of the state.
Yes.
And so how do we really plan for that kind of growth and make sure that, especially around housing, we have opportunities for different types of housing throughout our city. Ultimately, we want different price points and different types of housing. So regardless of whether you're single and you live alone, or just you and your dog, or you have a family of 6,
right.
If you want to call Grand Rapids home, there's a place for you.
Great.
Yeah, it's really exciting. We've done other plan updates. So in the past 10 years, we've updated our Parks Master Plan, GR Ford, which was a plan and vision for downtown. So a lot of planning has been happening over the last 20 years. So I don't want people to think that we haven't been planning.
Right, yeah.
And then we have these area-specific or neighborhood plans. But this plan is to tie a lot of that work together, and then to think about, where do we want our city to be 20 years from now?
So when you have these engagement meetings that you're going to have, what kind of engagement are you hoping to hear from the community?
Yeah, so it'll be a mix of, this is what is in the plan now. This is what we may want to consider keeping or changing. And then we want your input. And the last time we did the master plan, we used a lot of different creative ways. We'll lay out a map. We'll show you what currently exists. We'll talk about if change is going to happen. Where should that change occur? What kind of density do we want where, right? So in some neighborhoods, I live in a low-density neighborhood where it's mostly, single-family homes, one or
Right.
two-bedroom, or 2 stories, I should say, homes. If we need more density, where is it appropriate in those neighborhoods? So is it along the commercial districts? Do we really want to rethink some industrial spaces in the city? What about downtown? Do we really want height restrictions in certain areas?
Right.
So it's going to be a lot of conversation around that. And then how do we think about growth and do it thoughtfully, while, where people feel good about allowing greater density into neighborhoods, especially neighborhoods that haven't experienced it before.
Right.
Yeah, but it's not just housing. It's commercial districts, business districts, industrial spaces, corridors, main corridors versus, secondary, tertiary corridors. So it's really looking at land use across our entire city.
And how many meetings do you guys hope to host, or do you know that yet?
There will be a number of
There will
them.
be,
So
okay.
I anticipate the engagement process will be anywhere from 6 to 8 months.
Okay.
And then as the master plan is drafted, what we did last time with the Grand Rapids process is that as we kind of finished up one chapter,
Right.
we got feedback on that, made changes based on community feedback. And then the
Okay.
next, so we'll likely roll it out in phases and get feedback before the final document is really affirmed by the steering committee and the full master plan committee. Then it will have to go before the planning commission. Planning commission will review it. They can make recommended changes. They'll have a public hearing, and then ultimately the city commission has to adopt it.
Okay. So how would people be able to find out about these meetings? How will these be posted?
Yeah. So they're posted. We have a city website that is completely that's singularly dedicated to the update of the master plan.
Perfect.
I posted it on my Facebook page. It's posted on the city's Facebook page.
Okay.
And you can find out where those meetings are, and hopefully I'll see you there. I'll be going to several of them.
Perfect. So we encourage everybody, if they can, to go ahead and check that out and attend some of those meetings. All right. Well, let's go on to, I was recently reading that the Affordable Housing Committee,
Yeah,
is it?
Affordable Housing Fund Board.
Fund Board is
Yes.
seeking proposals for the American Rescue Plan Act, or ARPA funds, and there's a deadline coming up. So
Yes.
if someone's interested in bidding for some of that, is there some information we could share with people to help with that?
Yes, this is another one. Please go to the city website. I know I posted it as well. So we set up the Affordable Housing Fund Board about at least a year ago. We put the board members in place. City Commission allocated $5 million of ARPA funds to that fund. And then they worked in partnership with Ryan Kilpatrick he's an expert in housing, to come up with a plan to create a process to look at proposals on how to use those funds.
Okay.
The nice thing about those funds is that they're much more flexible than some of the other housing dollars we have, like home dollars or CDBG dollars. And we're hopeful that they can fill some of the gaps that we currently have when it comes to low income and affordable housing. So we put out a call for proposals.
Okay.
There are some recommended we have some recommendations on how we want those dollars to be used. So for what types of housing, really wanting to focus on low income as well as affordable housing, and then ideas that will help us to build housing for individuals who are currently unhoused. So they're kind of like 4 buckets that we're looking at.
Okay.
To invest these funds. My hope is that we'll add more funds to this pot. But I'm most hopeful to see what will come from this first round of RFPs. Those RFPs will be reviewed by the Affordable Housing Fund Board.
Okay.
They will make recommendations on how those funds are to be dispersed, and then ultimately the City Commission will approve how those funds are.
And so people that are bidding for these funds are organizations and nonprofits, and that can help with all these different issues that we have with affordable housing.
Yeah, nonprofit housing developers. It could be a nonprofit organization that currently exists. It could be a private developer if they, have always wanted to do a project related to low income or affordable housing and they haven't been able to make the numbers work. Potentially, if they need gap funding. When it comes to housing, I'll just add one more thing. That's about the fund, which is super exciting. So if you have ideas and a proposal, please fill out that proposal and get it back to us. It closes, I believe, February 21st.
February 17th is what I saw.
17th.
Yeah, so February
Thank you.
17th, yes.
Thank you for correcting me. On the same topic of housing, The state of Michigan just passed a $1.1 billion supplemental.
Okay.
And in that supplemental, $150 million was allocated for low-income housing gap funding. It'll go through MISHDA, but the hope is that those dollars will be able to be used to support projects that are in the pipeline.
Okay.
That maybe didn't get the 9% low-income housing tax credit that they applied for.
Okay.
So I'm encouraging all of our partners in the low-income housing development space to keep an eye on those funds. They're supposed to be eligible for disbursement within 45 days,
Okay.
and that could have a huge impact on our community.
Absolutely.
And then there was also $50 million put in for missing middle housing. That will raise the amount in MISHDA to $100 million for missing middle housing. Again, this would be to help build and support that kind of affordable housing, middle income housing.
Right.
So I really appreciate the state's work to allocate funds, and the city will do all that we can to get as many of those dollars back to Grand Rapids as we can.
Absolutely. Perfect. Wonderful. So if anybody is interested, if you haven't already, we're getting low on time, February 17th, and it's grandrapidsmichigan.gov/spring 2023 AHF. All right, and then we're also going to be doing some, we have a couple more minutes before we bring in our host. Do you want to touch a little bit on lead testing here in Grand Rapids?
Yes, so tomorrow City Commission will be reviewing a proposal coming from our community housing department. However, the idea really came from a childhood lead task force that I worked on a couple years ago. And the proposal is to build into our rental inspection a requirement for lead testing for houses that were built before 1978. So this would be a dust sampling, 8 samples that would be required as part of the rental inspection program. So we already have a rental inspection program. If you rent out your house, you have to get a rental inspection and a certification from the city.
Yep.
So part of that inspection, in addition to making sure that you have, your electrical is in good shape and you have,
Running
working
water.
smoke detectors and all of those things.
Yep.
We also want to add in lead testing to make sure that there's not lead dust in the home that children can be exposed to and potentially get poisoned by lead. I know we're going to be talking to Wayne in a minute about water.
Right.
But I always remind folks that even though we're converting our lead lines and getting rid of those old lines, the vast majority of children in our city are poisoned by lead in paint, not water. So we have to address lead paint and the exposure of lead paint that children, especially under the age of 6, have in their homes.
That's great. We're doing that.
Yeah.
All right, so we're on to our first break. It's time for our first break, and we will return in just a moment to hear Mayor Bliss speaking with Water Systems Manager for the City of Grand Rapids, Wayne Jernberg. Again, if you have any questions for Mayor Bliss or Wayne, you can send your comments or questions to cityconnection@grcmc.org, through Twitter @GRTVAccess, or by commenting on the GRTV Facebook page.
For over 30 years after humble beginnings as a public access TV station, the Community Media Center has grown to be an active, multi-platform media and technology assistance organization, encouraging and enabling our community to push the creative boundaries. We power a variety of resources, including a music-centered community radio station, WYCE, a community venue with stage and screen at Wealthy Theater, citizen-driven journalism with the Rapidian, a web development team empowering local nonprofits, an education department that trains and broadens students' minds, and a free speech public access television studio, GRTV, where it all began. By introducing audiences to new voices and ideas, we enhance community engagement and create connections between artists and audiences, enriching our city's cultural offerings. We empower and collaborate with platforms and resources accessible to all and used by all. Every free democratic society depends on media, accessible to the community and uncensored by government. The Community Media Center continues this work for the media landscape of today and tomorrow. These platforms and services empower our neighbors to tell their stories and explore the richness of culture that Grand Rapids has to offer. Connect, discover, learn, create, and share. The Grand Rapids Community Media Center.
Welcome back to this segment of City Connection. I'm glad to have with me Wayne Jernberg. He is the manager of our water system, and I'm so glad he can join us today because we often get asked about our water and our water quality and lead lines, and there's just lots of questions, which is good. It's an essential service that we provide as a city government. It's one of our, when I think of all the important services that we provide, taking care of wastewater and making sure that we do it in an environmentally sustainable way is important, as well as making sure people have clean water coming into their homes and drinking water. So you have an important job.
Yes.
And before we get into some of the city services and some of the work that you're doing to ensure good quality water for every citizen in our community and our customer communities, let's talk a little bit about you. So you have been with the city for almost 17 years.
Yes, started in December of 06.
Yeah, about the same time as me.
It flies by.
It does go by fast.
Yes, it does.
So for folks who don't know you, why don't you tell us a little bit about your background and kind of your role at the city, which
Yeah.
I know has changed a little bit over time.
It has. I came into the city as a hydraulic engineer back in 06. I had worked for some consulting engineers prior to that. I have a degree from Michigan Tech University. Go Huskies.
Yeah.
And through that, some of the consulting work, I got hooked into some of the projects out at the filtration plant out in West Olive. And through that experience, I was able to make some connections and make a name for myself as somebody that might be a good fit for the city long term. I got hired into the city and have held roles all 16 plus years I've been in the water system, whether it's been hydraulic engineer, assistant manager, or now the manager there. So
Yeah. It's great. And so I've been around about as long as you, so 17 years. I started in January of 06, serving as a city commissioner. But I've had the real fortune to see firsthand our Lake Michigan filtration plant. I've been out there on tours a number of times. Was recently out there to celebrate the addition of a solar array. I've been to our wastewater treatment facility. So I've been able to see it. But for folks who have never even heard of the Lake Michigan filtration plant and don't have a good sense of where the water comes from.
Yep.
Can you talk a little bit about the process, like from where we bring in the water to where it comes out of our tap?
Yep.
What is that process?
So first thing is there is actually a video out there. So if people want to learn more about the process, there is a video that's out on our website that people can take a look at. It has a few shots inside the plant. But we have a filtration plant essentially right on the shores. We've got two large pumping stations that bring the water in from Lake Michigan. For those that don't know, Lake Michigan is our only source of water. We do not get any water from the Grand River. That stopped back in the early 80s.
Yeah,
So
long
we
time
stopped,
ago.
Yeah, long time ago we stopped using river water. But we go through an extensive filtration process, flocculation, sedimentation, filtration process. From there the chlorine is added. We also add some fluoride to the water as well, which is helps with the teeth and things like that. But we also add corrosion control inhibitors at the plant as well. So the corrosion control inhibitors were something that we had to be added in 1994 with the original lead and copper rule. And what that is essentially builds and creates a coating that helps prevent lead from coming off into the water and stuff like that. So from there we pump the water into town. We actually serve many customers along the way in Ottawa County. And then retail customers. So we not only serve the city of Grand Rapids, but we serve the city of Walker, Tallmadge Township in Ottawa County. About 2/3 of the city of Kentwood is a Grand Rapids customer, Grand Rapids Township, Cascade Township. Those are all retail customers where we own the assets and meter individual properties. But then we also sell as wholesalers to East Grand Rapids and also to Ada Township as well. So overall, we've got about 81,000 accounts that we're responsible for.
Yeah, and I know out at the filtration plant, we do a lot of testing.
Yes.
So I've seen all of our testing and research and the work that we do out there. But we also test water that comes out of taps. So do you want to talk a little bit about how do we do testing of our water quality? And then we also put out every year a water quality report. So for individuals who are interested in how we test water coming out of the faucet, explain how that happens, and then where can people take a look at our water quality report?
So first things first, we do a consumer confidence report every year. We're actually in the process of compiling all the data for 2022, hence it'll be called our 2022 Consumer Confidence Report. That will be found on our website sometime probably towards early summer. People will be able to find it, but if anybody's interested, we have past water quality consumer confidence reports that goes back essentially about 15 to 20 years we have. So there's a huge library there. Not only do we test, so in terms of testing, we do the raw water testing at our filtration plant, but we also collect samples, from the plant itself. We're checking for concentrations of chemicals and things like that. Even on our deliveries of chemicals that come to our plant, we're checking things like that. Additionally, we're also out in the distribution system. We've got over 45 sites in the distribution system across our entire retail that we're required to test on a weekly basis. That information is all going back to our plant. So we're checking for bacteria results. We're making sure that we don't have any harmful bacteria. We're checking for other unregulated and regulated contaminants that might be in the water, which, at this point this year and for many years now, we've had 100% compliance with all of our sampling. One other thing that we're doing right now is we're actually, and I think it's in year 5 of a study, third part of a corrosion control study that Eagle asked us to take is the source water changes in Lake Michigan. We're checking on different potential corrosion control chemicals that would help further reduce the risk of exposure to lead. So we're actually right now, it's really cool. We've actually got four pipe rigs set up with different concentrations and different chemicals going through each one, and it's checking the lead content in harvested sections of lead pipe from our own system in terms of the lead service lines that we've harvested. So that's going to go on for about another year and a half, and through that it may make some recommendations for us to change the corrosion control chemical, but that'll be a decision that'll be made later on if we go that route.
That's great. And so for folks who, so let's go a little bit deeper in that, because I know there's a lot of talk about lead lines and concern about lead in water. We do test for that as well. So we started this a number of years ago, actually, when they updated the lead and copper rules in the state of Michigan. We came up with a plan to replace our lead lines. However, we don't have significant issues with lead in our water.
So we are required, prior to 2018, we were required to test for lead once every 3 years, provided we met the criteria at that particular time. Since 2018, we are now required to test annually. If we were to have a community-wide action level of sedence, so it's currently the lead action level is 15 parts. If we were to exceed that, then we would fall into something where we would be testing more frequently. We don't have that situation at this point. What we do though is like I said, we are required to test 50 locations on an annual basis. We report those to Eagle. Typically in October, I think the deadline is October 1st that we're supposed to have those into Eagle. They then take about a month or two to review the data, and they'll get back with us what our certified level is. So at this point, we're still under the action level. However, there are changes coming to the state of Michigan's rule. When I say changes, the action level is actually going to be dropping to 12 starting in 2025. There might even be further changes that come because the federal EPA rule is changing additionally. It keeps evolving. So while we don't have a community-wide issue, we do take it very seriously. And since 2017, we started doing wholesale lead service line replacements, both the public side and the private side. The public side is the portion from the main to what we call a stop box. It's basically the shut-off valve out in the street. So if there was a leak in the home, that's how we would shut it off at that point. We've always done that portion, but starting in 2017, we actually started working on the private sides, where we changed our policy that it indicated that, no lead is the right way to go. And if there's ever a disturbance on that service line, we step in and try to replace it. So we've been doing that since 2017, and we've got a lot planned for 2023, I can tell you that.
Yeah, so we, the city started planning and actually funding the lead line replacement program a number of years ago, as you said. Fortunately, we've been able to get additional funding from the federal government and the state government to accelerate that work. And as you said, we have a lot of work coming up this construction cycle, and our intent is to replace 100% of those lines.
That is correct. Right now, the deadline for us is January 1st of 2041. We've got a little over 22,600 lead service lines still left in the city. Our goal this year is to get out 2,000 lead service lines. So almost 10% of our lead service lines are targeted this year. One thing that we always ask residents is when we have these opportunities to talk about this is when we have to do this type of work, we have to do work on private property. Okay, so we have to have access. And in order for us to have access, there is an agreement that we have to ask the property owners to sign off to allow our contractors to get not only on the private side to do some digging, but also in the basement to be able to set that new meter and stub in that new copper service line. So it's very imperative, and that's one of the things that we've run into is in terms of our delays on projects has been just getting access agreements signed.
Yeah, thank you for saying that. So we only have a couple minutes left, so I know there's a number of things I still want to talk to you about. However, for folks who are struggling to pay their water bills, we do have assistance. Can you maybe touch on that before we end this segment, and then we'll have some additional time for questions.
Okay, so we do have assistance programs that are out there. If anybody is having trouble paying their bill, I encourage them to call 311. Okay, go through 311. They have scripts set up to be able to funnel you to the right people at the KCCA, and they can get you set up with the right program for you. There's actually multiple sources. The city provides funding to KCCA on an annual basis in our budget, but currently there are still 2 additional resources. The MyHalf program for customers that are homeowners. There's an opportunity there for bill assistance that way, and then there's also the low-income household water assistance program. That I believe is scheduled to run out later this year. So if people are having issues, I encourage them to call and ask about those other programs.
Yeah, so please, if you have any challenges and you need assistance, please call 311. So with that, we'll take a short break, and then we'll be back with Wayne for some additional questions.
The Wealthy Theater is Grand Rapids' local movie theater and performance center. Since 1998, it has been a host to nationally touring music groups, local theater performances, and a variety of community events. Today, the Wealthy Theater is not only a landmark community treasure with historic significance, but a pioneer in the infusion of technology and traditional theater. Underneath the elegance and classic sensibility that defines Wealthy Theater, there is a matrix of new technologies. The theater is completely digital and outfitted with cameras and microphones for concerts, theater and comedy troupes, speakers and lecturers, and so much more. Experience all that Wealthy Theater has to offer. And bring a friend. Be surprised by the Wealthy Theater.
WYCE is a world of music. We aim to shine a light on underserved musical artists in a non-commercial format with no advertisements. Volunteers come in to create personalized music programming that broadcasts over the air at 88.1 FM to West Michigan and via the internet to listeners all over the world. These listeners sponsor our efforts, keeping WYCE independent and community-owned. Musicians use the station to broaden their audience and build support for their latest projects by submitting their music to be included in our broadcast and performing live in studio. Businesses find their customers through underwriting, nonprofits inform the community to their mission, and listeners stay informed about local events. We believe that music is a powerful force that creates quality relationships in our community that speaks to our emotions and provides the soundtrack to our lives.
Back to City Connection. Okay, we have a couple questions here for Wayne today. The first question is, I live in the Heritage Hill area. The water pressure on our street seems really low. My neighbors and I all have the same complaint. Does the city deal with this, or do we have to get private contractors? And this is from Katie.
Well, Katie, what you should do in that situation is contact 311. 311 will route the service request to our meter maintenance group, and they will come out and investigate it further. If it's in multiple homes, we might have to make multiple appointments with the various residents and so forth, but we will check that. This time of year, it can be a little bit tricky sometimes this year because a lot of times we're also checking the hydrants out in the street for the pressure and so forth like that. If it's a specific time of day and the weather were warmer, we could even put a chart recorder up in that particular area of the neighborhoods and stuff like that and check to see if it's a demand issue or anything like that.
But first step is call 911 or 311.
Call 311 and
Okay.
they'll get you to our meter maintenance group.
Okay.
Yep.
All right, so this question is from Bo. Do communities outside of Grand Rapids that use our water pay for it? And if so, how much?
I don't have the numbers in front of me right now to tell you how much, but yes. So the city has something called zone gating. So based off the percentage of flows that are billed in our partner communities, they are charged a portion of the assets as well as the costs for actually treating the water and so forth. So in most cases, and typically it's actually the further east you go from Lake Michigan, the higher the costs actually get. So City and Walker is a little bit cheaper than Grand Rapids. Talmadge Township might be a little bit more because they have fewer customers, but all communities are required to pay for water and sewer service.
Okay.
And they pay for what they use. So we
Correct.
do a rate study
Yep.
every year, and part of our rate study is to make recommendations for the rates in the city, but also the rates in all of our customer communities.
Okay.
So we actually meet with our partner communities on a monthly basis. It's called Utility Advisory Board. So we actually go through, review the rates. We actually look at large projects with them as well. And usually you have a little bit of predetermination of what impacts it might have on the rates when we do projects, because there are shares that go through, like the large transmission mains and the filtration plant, which we talked about. Those are some things we call fully integrated projects or assets. Therefore, all the communities share in the cost of those projects.
Yeah.
Okay. This is an anonymous question. Has Grand Rapids water been impacted by the PFAS disaster in Rockford?
So the good news is we have not had any issues with PFAS in our water. With that said, we are required by Eagle to test on an annual basis, and possibly there might be some changes coming to that regulation, but we are testing on an annual basis at this point for PFAS. We may have to go to a 6-month testing period at this point, so
Okay.
it's not an issue.
All right. Even if Grand Rapids doesn't have lead issues, there is still a disparity with areas with lead lines being concentrated in poor areas of Grand Rapids. This is from Georgia. Not necessarily a question, but a comment.
Yeah, it's unfortunate, but when we have older housing stock, that's typically where the lead service lines are at. Even with that said, okay, there are situations where prior to 2014, a lot of the brass fittings that may be in homes have concentrations of lead in them as well. And prior to 1988, the copper plumbing that was used, they used a blend of lead solder that was used to connect those pipes. So therefore, there's a chance of lead. So it goes across all neighborhoods is what it does. It is unfortunate the lead service lines are there, but there's still that possibility, even in homes that don't have lead service lines, that there could be a particular lead issue from some of these connection types. It's highly unlikely, but it's still a possibility.
Okay.
I'll add, though, the City Commission and the department, I should say, we have worked really hard to concentrate, especially some of the initial work that we've done around lead replacement lines, in our neighborhoods of focus. So in the city of Grand Rapids, we have 17 census tracts that we refer to as our neighborhoods of focus. And those are census tracts and neighborhoods where we know we have a higher concentration of poverty. So we have, especially over the last 5 years, been really intentional about investments in the neighborhoods of focus, especially around infrastructure improvements.
Okay.
That goes for lead line replacements, it goes for sidewalk repairs, street repairs, our street light replacement, primary circuit updates. We've been very intentional about focusing first on our neighborhoods of focus.
Okay. So that includes when you with the lead, replacing the pipes and things like that. We're concentrating on those neighborhoods as well.
We
Yes.
do. It's a strategy that when we set out and got some of the grant dollars, we wanted to make sure that we made the biggest bang for the buck that we got in terms of the grant dollars that we have. The other component, and yes, while we're doing the NOFs, the neighborhoods of focus, we're also partnering with a lot of our lead service line replacements with our Vital Streets initiative as well.
Yes.
We also realize that we don't want to be going into streets that have just been paved in the past 2, 3, 4, 5 years. We want to try to get in advance. So that's really, when we look at where we're at right now, coming into 2023, that's what people are going to see. They should start to see this summer, start to see a lot of digging in streets that'll get paved either later this year or early next year.
And they're doing that work pre to getting the streets done.
Yep.
Okay. Okay, this is a question for the mayor. How is the master plan different from the strategic plan?
That's a good question. And I know there's lots of plans at the city. We
There
have
is.
our economic plan, or equitable economic plan, and mobility plan, and Parks Master Plan, so I know it can be really confusing, and I apologize for that, but we're a large organization. The strategic plan is really an internal document that drives the strategy for city services and priorities. Kind of like any plan, most private businesses, nonprofits, they have a strategic plan that they operate from that they update every 3 to 5 years.
Correct.
So our strategic plan at the city is really broken down in certain areas: governmental excellence, environmental sustainability, public safety, housing. So we have these 6 pillars, and then we have racial equity that runs through all of those pillars. So that is really our internal goals and objectives around city services and things that we want to accomplish. The master plan is really focused on land use. So I'd say strategic plan is city services, and the master plan is land use.
Okay, perfect. All right, I've been trying to keep the drain clear in front of my house, but it seems to still overflow in heavy rains. Should I call this in?
Yes.
Would that be a
Yes.
311? Yes. Yes.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah.
First of all, thank you for trying to keep your drain clean. That's imperative. But yes, if you continue to have issues where it's filling up and you've got standing water at the end of your driveway or wherever it might be, it might be worth us to come out and take a look to see if there's an obstruction in the lateral or something like that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Question on what do when you're having our neighbors, when we're working to clean up that up, what do we do to clean what? I mean, it's just the debris that's just in the street, or do you want us to kind of rake inside, or?
If you can remove the debris and put it in a refuse bag,
Okay.
or take it or haul it away to the city's Domtar site, to the disposal site, that's perfect.
Okay.
Once we get out there, we'll likely be looking up the lateral just to see, make sure there's no obstruction in there, because we all know that sometimes stones and things like that get thrown in there, can wash in there as well, and that can create a little bit of an issue if there's not enough capacity to drain.
Okay.
And I should say, if you're interested in learning more, we have great opportunities within our department to work in our department.
Yes, we do.
So, one thing, while Wayne's still with us, I want to make sure that we touch on, Wayne and our department has worked really closely to try to encourage people to think about this as a career path.
Yeah.
And so they recently, was it about a year ago?
About a year and a half, 2 years ago, yeah.
Started a creative workforce development program to help create pathways for individuals to potentially find a job in our public works department. Do you want to speak to that?
Yeah.
So,
In case somebody's out there itching to
Yes.
learn more and have an internship.
yeah, so there's a couple different facets to it. We actually partnered with Grand Rapids Community College to secure a $500,000 EPA grant to help broaden and develop essentially a water workforce from underserved areas and underserved communities. So the school year, the GRCC school year of 2022-2023 is our first year of having it. And we've got 5 interns that are going through the program. They are paid interns. They're getting paid for 24 hours of work at either our wastewater recovery facility or it's at our filtration plant. And by going through and completing the studies that go with this, there's no charge to the student with this grant. They're actually, like I said, getting paid to be an intern and learn about operations. Once they go through essentially, about 9 months, they're going through taking the courses, then they're going to be approved, at least on the water side, they're approved to take a licensed operator exam, which would basically get them a job at any water system statewide. And we've had one of our interns actually just left us. He's still going to continue through on the internship program. He just left us and took a full-time job with the City of Wyoming's water treatment plant, so we couldn't be more proud of him. It's a good program so far. We do have opportunities that'll be starting up. You'll start to see a lot more recruitment for it. So we're looking at another 6 interns starting again in the school year of 23 to 24. And we're actually in the process now working with GRCC to identify additional grant opportunities to maybe possibly expand this to other communities, i.e. Wyoming, Plainfield Township, the other large water systems and wastewater systems in the area. Another caveat, and while that program is focused on 18 to 24-year-olds, we also have other programs too in this that are tied to youth education as well, and helping our students, our youth, our elementary, our middle schools and high schoolers understand the water cycle, the urban water cycle. So as we sit there and have rain and so forth like that, or we pull water in from Lake Michigan, we use the water to shower, to bathe, to cook, whatever, and then it discharges, we get rid of it, we often lose sight of it. Well, that same water ends up in the Grand River and it goes back out into Lake Michigan. So it's a full cycle here in West Michigan. Some communities don't have that same opportunity. So we actually do a lot of camps, summer camps. We actually do 1-week camps with the Public Works Academy over at GRCC. And then coming up in February and March, we have a Saturday event called Waterpalooza. So it's a great opportunity for the middle school age and high schoolers to understand that water cycle. If they want to learn more, they can check out our website. There's a lot of information out there for it. GRCC's website as well.
Okay, well that's exciting.
It's a great program.
Yeah.
Strongly encourage folks, and these are good paying jobs, and
Yep.
I mean it's a wonderful career pathway.
Yeah, it's really where we're at now in terms of our employment. There's plenty of opportunities for people to come in, especially if you're an intern and you prove to us that you have the work ethic and the passion and desire to be part of the water and wastewater fields. You pretty much have an opportunity, because we are constantly, people are moving on to other positions or they're retiring. There's a lot of people move up, there's entry-level positions, and they're all good paying jobs. Even the internships are good paying jobs. They're about $17 an hour for an internship.
That's great.
It's a great opportunity for kids.
Yeah.
All right, well thank you, Wayne. I really appreciate you joining. That's a really great program to hear about. And if you at home have any additional questions for Wayne or about the use of the city's water system, you can reach out by dialing 311 or emailing water@grcity.us.
How do you build a strong local food economy? Meet Chris. Chris is opening Osteria Rosa, a locally sourced Italian restaurant in a building brought back to life by 616 Development. But he doesn't know any local farmers to supply him with food year-round. This is Melissa. Melissa runs the Fulton Street Farmers Market and publishes a long list, even in the dead of winter, of available produce, meats, bakery goods, and more on the Rapidian. This is Amy. Amy wants to do more to support the farmers in her local food economy. Amy talks to Melissa, who introduces her to farmers at the Fulton Street Farmers Market, and Amy, in turn, publishes their stories, also on the Rapidian. Chris hears about the Rapidian and now has access to a local grocery list and information that he needs to make connections with local farmers. He feeds his patrons with local food year-round. Connections multiply. Meals are shared. A stronger local food economy is built.
City Connection. So we have a couple more questions that we have for Mayor Bliss. So the first one is from Tia, who is on the Affordable Housing Board, and is there citizen representation?
Yes, that's a great question. And yes, the answer is yes, there is citizen representation. So we actually went through a pretty thorough process when we appointed the members. It was an open application nomination process. Individuals were vetted. We were very intentional about making sure it was a diverse group of individuals with some lived experience and citizen representation, and then also coupled with some experts in the field. So we do have, I believe that they just recently appointed Jim Talon as the chair of that body. He's been active in the housing space for a long time. And then I know that we also have Lindsay Reams from our Housing Commission. But the vast majority of the members of the board are residents. And then we are utilizing Ryan Kilpatrick, who's an expert in this with Housing Kent and Housing Next. And he is like a expert available to the board members to help with some of the work and really vet out some of the ideas.
Okay, perfect. And here's another question from Ian. What happened if a mandatory lead test comes back positive?
Oh, yes. So anytime we have any positive test, whether it's for lead or anything else, we will go in and identify where the problem is coming from. So as Wayne said, sometimes it's not the lead line from the street to the house. Sometimes it's the faucets. If the faucets are older, or even internal copper lines and lines inside the home from the kind of basement that goes all the way up to your bathroom or your kitchen. And so we will investigate to see where we think the core issue is coming from, and then work with the homeowner to rectify the situation.
And there is some funding available that people can apply for?
Yeah, and usually we'll try to work with the family or the property owner to do that.
Okay.
Yes.
Because I know it can get expensive.
Yeah, and I would say that's true for lead as well. So we have funds through the city, through the Community Development Department, that are available for lead remediation for homes that test positive for lead, or where a child has been poisoned, and those funds are made available to help with lead remediation, which can be quite costly for full remediation.
Right, absolutely. My 13-year-old is interested in how the government works, and are there any tours of the City Hall? This is from Yim.
Yes, please call my office. So I personally will sometimes do tours if I'm available. My assistant will do them as well. And then I often do group tours. So just last week I met with a group of Cub Scouts. I've met with Girl Scouts. I've had different groups of young people come through. JA, I've often went and met with students out there. I go into schools and I talk about local government and what we do, and try to provide as much education as I can. But yes, if your 13-year-old is interested in a tour, please reach out to my office. You can call 456-3168, and my assistant Laura will help with that.
Perfect.
Yeah.
And a cool thing kind of now with the City Commission meetings, some of them are at 2 o'clock, where they used to be so late that you didn't want to take your kids, but if it is a teenager that's interested, that's a great way to kind of see the City Commission in action.
It is, and it's actually some of the feedback that we've heard over the years, and I anticipate that we'll have many more student groups coming to our 2 o'clock. I know my Mayor's Youth Council can now attend our 2 p.m. meetings, as well as others who those evening meetings just didn't work for them.
Right, absolutely. Yeah. All right. Well, that's the end of our questions right now. So let's jump on to some other things going on. We recently learned that we had talked about this a few months ago, that the Grand Rapids Police Department is been doing some recruiting, trying to get some new people on staff and things like that. And so they're going to be doing some open houses at local parks this next, well, kind of guess it's going to be considered the fall. Do you want to talk a little bit to that and about the program?
Yeah, so it is a top priority. I mean, I think we will have rolling programs for recruitment for both the police department and the fire department. So we know over the next couple of years we have a number of individuals who will be retiring. So we know that we'll have natural attrition, and we need to hire and backfill those positions. So the police department is actively working with a national firm helping with recruitment. We want to hire people right here from our community to fill those positions. Similar to the water program, we have a hiring process for people who've already gone through the police academy and are certified, or maybe have worked in other departments. But we also have a recruit program where we will work with an individual, help pay for them to go to the police academy, and then we have paid internships at the police department to try again to support individuals to have the experience to see if that's something what they want to do. And then if you can't afford to pay for the academy or to work during that time, we can offset the cost of that. So if you're interested, please let us know. The fire department as well, they just started a cadet program and a recruitment program. So there's lots of opportunities if you want to work at the city, either in the police department, fire department, or any of our other departments, to let us know.
Great, that's wonderful. So the two open houses I know that the police department are hosting, they're not till January or September, but they're going to be at Mulek Park September 16th, and then at Richmond Park in September 28th.
Yeah.
I think that's kind of an interesting, fun idea to kind of get whatever that neighborhood, that area, to come and listen and learn a little bit more, and maybe there's some high schoolers or people in college that would like to check that out. So great. Also, just recently the city released their financial report. Do you want to talk a little bit about that? It kind of shows how funds are spent.
I do, and it's if you don't want to read the 300 and some page annual fiscal plan, this is a great way to learn more about our city budget. So every single year, our CFO, so our chief financial officer, and our city treasurer and our city comptroller, they work together to create a citizen's guide to city finances. So the acronym we use is CAFR, but it's really a citizen guide to city finances, and it breaks down the entire city budget really to make it more digestible. It's an easy read. There's some great charts that kind of break things down. So it breaks down all of our revenue streams, where they come from, and then our expenditures, and then it explains the difference between a general fund, which is general tax dollars, mostly income tax, that pay for services like our parks and police and fire, economic development, planning, compared to enterprise funds, which is what pays for the water system, sewer system, parking system. Those funds are funds that are fees for service. So when you pay your water bill, your refuse bill, your parking ticket, those funds have to be spent to support that service.
Okay.
So your water bill can't be used, all the money you send for your water bill, none of that can be used to support police and fire. So those are separate funds. Legally they have to be separate. So the CAFR does a really nice job of breaking that down. It also breaks down like what percentage of funds do we spend on what services. It talks about our debt. So we bond for things. So for instance, when we replaced all of our water lines to separate our sewer system, we bonded for that, and we're paying it back over 30 years. So you can see all of our debt services and when those will be paid back. So it's a great way to learn about our city budget, kind of in broad strokes. Now, it doesn't provide departmental budgets, so you won't be able to say, okay, how much does the fire station spend on fire trucks and equipment and that, right? But it does give a really good overview of the city budget, and I think it's extremely helpful, especially as we go into the budget season. The other thing it includes is information about our annual audit. So every single year we are audited by a third party. So we use the auditing firm Plant Moran. They come in and they do an extensive internal audit of all of our finances, every department, every fund, everything. It's a very extensive audit. And then they give us back a report, and they let us know if they had any findings, any negative findings, as they call it. And so they also presented to the City Commission and found that we had a clean report. It was a very positive audit. We had no negative findings, which again just shows the integrity of our financial services.
Right, right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Which is all good news.
And so your fiscal year would end June 30th, and then they start the audit and then present it by the beginning of, say, the calendar year.
Yes.
Is kind of how that works.
Yeah, usually it's like the last quarter of the calendar year, and then it's presented typically in January.
Okay. All right. Wonderful.
Yeah.
All right. So let's talk about some events and things like that. We've got about 3 or 4 minutes left. World of Winter is going wonderfully. Been seeing a lot of people out.
Yeah.
And that does end literally in 1 more month.
1 more month. And if you came down in January, come back again in February because we have new exhibits. So we have the gnomes over at Anabuan Park. Lots going on. Just this past weekend, there was a silent disco over at 555 Monroe. We'll have Valentine's with the ice sculptures coming up. Those are always awesome. Yeah. We have a ice piano with a concert. So there's still lots of fun activities planned every single week between now and the end of February.
Perfect. Yeah, March 6th is the last time, so I hope you guys get out to check that out. Is there an update about the amphitheater?
Oh, yeah. So last week I had a meeting at our Convention Arena Authority. So the intent is for the city to sell a portion of 201 Market to the Convention Arena Authority to build an amphitheater. And so we updated some of the memorandum of understanding and kind of the agreement to allow the CAA, as they finalize their plans, to allow for a potential naming right. So we talked about that at the Convention Arena Authority, but also just shared publicly the intent that the Convention Arena Authority plans to move forward with purchasing the 11 acres that they need for the amphitheater in the next couple months.
Okay.
So that's pretty exciting. There's still some work being done behind the scenes to make sure that everything is ready to go. And then once the sale of the property is complete, the city will need to start moving off that site. So it's kind of a 2-part process, right? We need to start to move off the site, at least the site where they want to do the amphitheater. That will then enable them to get in and start to do some demolition and build the site.
Okay, wonderful.
Yeah.
And the last thing, we've got 1 minute left, is the WYCE Jammies, which is part of the Grand Rapids Community Media Center. Jammies 23 is Friday, the 24th of February at the intersection. And there can be over 20 performances there. But I think what is really cool that I didn't know that you did, and you've done the last couple of years, that you proclaim it WYCE Day.
I do.
I think that is so fun.
I do, and I will again because I love the Jammies. It is one of my favorite events. It highlights the incredible music that we have here in our community, gives a lot of love to a lot of our local musicians. And it's just a wonderful time to come together as a community and celebrate all the incredible work of YCE, but also to just be grateful that YCE exists here in our city. So.
Absolutely. And we've got, with COVID going, it kind of got quiet, but there's a lot of great energy. So thank you so much. Thank you so much for joining us today for this episode of City Connection. Thanks to everyone at home who sent in your questions for the show. City Connection is brought to you through a partnership between the Community Media Center and the City of Grand Rapids. If you have any more questions about the city that you'd like to be answered on our next program, you can email us at cityconnection@grcmc.org. Our next episode is on March 6th, and we'll be joined by one of our new city commissioners, Lisa Knight. We'll see you then. Thank you.